The following are excerpts, a highlight reel of the 2-hour presentation presented on behalf of Transpac Yacht Club and Marine Weather University on the course A Navigator Looks at Transpac. The entire presentation will be uploaded into the curriculum of the Marine Weather University course, Preparing for Hawaii Races. Have a look around the Marine Weather University campus. Isn't it time you raised your weather IQ?
Good evening. I'm Trans-Pacific Yacht Club's Vice Commodore Alan Andrews. And on behalf of the Transpac Yacht Club leadership, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. This evening, we're honored to have one of the best navigators in the world as our head presenter and a whole lot of other really smart people helping out. I've learned every time I've heard Peter talk, and I expect I'll learn more tonight. Also, Transpac Yacht Club sends a big thanks to Randy Smith for organizing all of our seminars, including this one. Thank you, Randy. I'll turn it back to you to introduce Peter and get on with the evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. And before I introduce the main guest tonight, just hopefully everybody that signed up for this, over 221 people are online. And just as I was saying to Peter a few minutes ago, he really has become a true friend of Transpac and of offshore racing on the West Coast. We are very fortunate to have him with us tonight. And if you look down below, you may recognize a few other names. Peter has asked a couple of his buddies, Stan Honey, Artie Means, and Nick White, the original developer of the Expedition software program. So they're going to be hanging out in the chat room tonight, helping out. So with that, welcome everybody. Glad to have you here tonight. I'd like to introduce Peter Eisler. Come on up, Peter. There he is.
All right, Randy, thanks so much. Great to be here. Welcome everybody. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm so psyched to be part of this event and super proud of being the Transpac Yacht Club. And during COVID, I teamed up with my good friend Chris Bedford, the world's best sailing meteorologist. He just got back from Barcelona supporting American Magic in his 11th America's Cup campaign as meteorologist. We did our first one together with Dennis Conner down in Australia, and he kept going. So during COVID, I was about to do a bunch of expedition online courses, and I was talking to Chris. He goes, I've always wanted to do a weather school, have this idea for a curriculum to start with clouds and build it up, and then weather models and the internet is the last thing you should be learning. And so I immediately pivoted. We started Marine Weather University, and now there's dozens of courses there. Many of them are free, some are big bucks, and I'm really proud of all of them there. Chris did an amazing job, and they help me all the time, even though I have a degree in meteorology. The biggie is the Offshore to Hawaii course, Preparing for Hawaii Races, which we first put together in 2021 in the university, and I keep it updated and will, in fact, put the recording of this course in there as well as whatever comes out of it. It gets much more in depth than we'll be able to get in tonight in some other subjects that we won't be covering, including safety, electronics. Chris has an amazing climatology presentation that's in there. Artie has a presentation on marine electronics. I encourage everybody who is here to at least have a look at that. Go to marineweatheru.com and look for the Transpac course. First, let's look at your goals, because not everybody's the same. Not every boat that goes to Transpac is the same, and it kind of depends how you approach Transpac as a navigator, depending on some of your goals and the boat. So first thing you're going to do before you even sign on is assess the boat, the crew, and the equipment. Hopefully there'll be some practice. Hopefully there'll be some racing in the months leading up to the race. There's still a lot of time where you can get ownership of the instruments and fine-tune the calibration, which will make your job in the race a lot better, because garbage in, garbage out. Not only is it important to have good wind and speed information for the speed team sailing the boat anytime, but when you're in weather routing mode, as we are in a long race like Transpac, the ability to have better numbers to throw into the weather routing module in Expedition or whatever router you use really benefits the end result, garbage in, garbage out. You will also, during that time, be working on your polars and your sail chart. And then something that I'm really big on is sailing team communication. For you navigators here, have you ever thought about what the sailing team thinks about the navigator? I mean, it's not a really great image. I mean, growing up, the navigator was this usually an older male who stayed down below pretty much all the time. This was before satellite nav or anything when I got started. And they just seemed to have a never ending job. And, their communication was normally relegated to like, hey, can you throw this overboard for me? Part of this goal to get communication going is to make your image a little bit better and to help the navigator do a better job and be a better part of the sailing team. Setting how to set up your nav station and your role as navigator. And then we'll look at early stage prep in the couple months leading up to the race, some safety considerations, and a touching on race strategy and historical weather, for which there is tons more in that Marine Weather University course on Transpac. Obviously, weather routing, race tracking, which is so important. You're sailing on a short course. You make your tactical decisions based on where the competitors are. You don't just make it totally on the wind. You factor in where the fleet is as well. Same thing true in a long race. And so being facile and good at being able to find your position is important. Pre-race prep in the week or so before the race, getting good at ensemble routing is super important. It's weather routing with hundreds of models. Thank you, Nick, for giving us so many of those built into Expedition with weather links, and something new really this year, thanks to Starlink, and that's satellite, high-res satellite, unlimited data. What are we going to do with it? Final set up the last 48 hours. So that's the outline of well, here's my goals. When I'm do the Transpac this year with Roy Disney on Pyewacket 68, I want to spend more time on deck and sailing. You see me down cold and wet down below on Rambler 100 there. It's way more fun to be on deck. You get more engaged with the crew and the conditions. A navigator's job in the modern world should not just be looking at the computer. And when you're driving the boat, we become a lot more aware of the characteristics of the wind, and the numbers of the wind direction and wind speed come clearer to you than they possibly can sitting down below, and get out on the water and work on the wind numbers after I have boat speed, heading, and heel sorted out. The best time to calibrate is when you have a full crew, and during racing is the best, or race mode sailing. And starting out with polars, my advice and my experience, I start out the designer VPP, that's the velocity prediction program, basically a computer prediction of what the boat would do on true wind angles and true wind speeds all across the matrix of wind speeds and wind angles, is a good starting point, and usually the best starting point for a boat. If you're on a boat that doesn't have a designer, or they don't have a computer and a VPP, then you start out with a similar sized boat and just start adjusting it. Nick makes it really easy in Expedition. It's very important, that bottom point there, that you know the wind speed reference height of the initial polar that you're getting. Like a boat like Pyewacket 70 with a 115-foot mast, the wind is 14% faster up there than it is at 10 meters, which is the reference height that grid files are you generally produced in, and what oftentimes lower end VPP programs produce their polars in. You definitely always want to have your polars in Expedition, the ones that you route with, be scaled to masthead wind speed. Super easy to do. Nick provides in the help file in Expedition a scaling formula so that you can scale. If you do have 10 polars that are set for 10 meters, you can scale it up to your masthead height. Always scale your polars to masthead. There is a course in Marine Weather U I worked on really hard on instrument tuning and polar editing. It's one of the two newest courses at MWUU, and I'm really proud of it. I spent a lot of time sharing my system, which I've evolved over a number of years, on how to set up and tune your instruments. Okay, communication. Remember what I said, the image of the old school Navigator, and you want to break out of that? Communication. There's the tactician and the Navigator on the Mod 70 talking. And look where the Navigator is. He is on deck wearing a helmet, not down below. Communication doesn't just happen. Like, you can't just, if you show up on a team and you communicate just the way you've always done it on a boat, it may or may not be that efficient. The ability for you to quickly and succinctly get your point across in the priorities is really important. In Transpac, everybody's going to be sleep deprived. You're going to be sleep deprived. So you want to be as efficient as possible communicating. And I've done some coaching with Transpac teams over the last few years, and this is something that we developed, was a practice system. We pretend like we're racing, and we say, okay, we're about to cross the ridge, and we're on this boat, and we're going to all get together on a Zoom call, and the navigator is going to give a 15-minute briefing of where we are and what the plan is for the next 2 to 4 hours short term and the next 36 hours long term. We'll talk a little bit more about strategy later. Practicing that, getting the lingo down, having the afterguard and the other members of the team ask questions. Well, what about this? What about this? Looking at the expedition screen, starting to learn about what one can do operating the box and with weather routing will help everybody get more comfortable with what you're selling, the navigator's selling, and you'll get better questions that will help you do a better job yourself. So if you expect a left-hand wind shift and you were sailing in this old wind, the boat that sails hot and fast early on gets further downwind, because when the wind shifts, they're losing, but when the wind shifts, all of a sudden they're further down the new ladder rungs than the boat that just sailed targets. So in the nomenclature I'm comfortable with, we have a concept called VMG mode, which is that red circle right there. That's sort of what the polars are saying we should be doing. Hot VMG would be hotter than that a little bit. Every sailor on the planet wants to do that when there's waves, because you can catch waves easier. And then deep VMG it probably is this line here. Probably VMG for most sailors out in the open ocean is a little bit hot, but deep VMG would be really honoring the low end. The concept of not sailing your VMG targets, but deviating because of the angular advantage caused by wind shifts that we call wallaying. So there's different stages in the race of the Transpac. We're going to look at that in a second here. And there's times when these different modes, these are all downwind. The A2's up, the pole's back. We're no longer reaching. We're in VMG sailing part of the race, but there's still a bit of leeway that we can have, and we can take advantage of that. Setting up your nav station and your role on the boat. Comfort's important. I mean, here I am there's Pyewacket right there. You can sit and be comfortable using the computer on any tack. Mostly starboard until it's port and maybe some jibes. It's got to be dry. I don't know how many nav stations have been in where there's some leak over the top. These are the boat has to be dry back here where the expensive and fragile equipment is. You don't want to lose any of this stuff. The ergonomics of it have to be good. Like, part of comfortable means there's some sort of wedge so you can operate on an angle of heel and not be, for a period of time and not get cramps or not get hurt or not be so, out of kilter that you need a chiropractor halfway through the race, because only a few boats have chiropractors on it. You don't just step on the boat 2 days before Transpac and get good value out of your role unless you have some ownership and all this sort of thing. communication system, obviously so important. I think it's a no-brainer now. I mean, you got to have Starlink, and then you need your always on. Starlink draws a lot of power, so a lot of boats you're just going to flick it on for when you want to get grid files or do weather routing or get a satellite image or call home, and then you're going to flick it off again unless you have unlimited power supply. But more power supply means you're bringing more fuel to run the charger, and so that's slow. So you got to balance all this stuff out. But I mean, already Starlink is a game changer. I mean, we don't use the fleet broadband and stuff anymore. So I would, highly recommend. It's not that expensive. You get the Starlink, and to me, the Iridium Go is a good always-on system. The downside of it is it's requires a cell phone to be Wi-Fi tethered to it. You can use the handset to send text and stuff, but it's a really as it's a good data backup. And then finally, I think it's foolish not to have a standalone satellite phone in the ditch bag available to use in the case that the whole boat goes dark because it got really wet down below. Safety considerations. There is the Rambler 100 in the Irish Sea with the broken keel fin. Always monitor VHF 16. It's a law. It's a law of the seas. We look out for our other fellow yachts people and boaters and humans out on the water. The way I do that in an offshore race is I have the VHF on very quiet down below because I don't want to wake up the crew like all of a sudden in the middle of the ocean. And you will have VHF transmissions in the middle of the ocean. There's the Coast Guard can reach you anywhere. We roll with on deck VHFs. We have two watch captain VHFs that come up and down and get charged. So the crew on deck who is awake is monitoring VHF 16. Those of you who've done this race before have seen this. This is Stan, who's won the Transpac and Hawaii races as much as anybody. Here's one of his more recent successes on board the Comanche, where he set the record for the monohull record for the race. Artie holds the multi-hull record on Mighty Merlot. And the stages start to synoptic breeze, then the windy reach to the ridge. Beware of routing too close to the high. Then the slot car section when you're in VMG, the spinnaker's up, the pole's back, but you're pretty much stuck on starboard jibe. And then finally the run, that is where both jibes are more equal, and there's a possibility that going on to port jibe isn't just wasting away extra distance. How to play with the cloud streets and the squalls. You're getting into the lower latitudes now. And then finally, the finish approach. In the preparing for Transpac course that I told you about earlier on, there is a presentation by Bedford on the climatology of Transpac, and it's a body of knowledge that you absolutely have to have. I mean, Stan's general rules in his stages of the race basically are evolved from the climatology of the Transpac routes in July. And here are some of the things that Chris talks about in that presentation. The diurnal wind oscillation, that's the Pacific high, or a high pressure system in the northern hemisphere, will grow and will breathe. It'll get bigger and smaller in intensity during a 24-hour period. And this is wind shifts right here. If this is the mean wind 0 here, this is a 5-degree shift. This is a 5-degree lefty. It's a 10-degree lefty. And this is time of day, 0 sun time, noon sun time. And here you have what, in the absence of any other weather feature things, no tropical waves, the high's not moving and being pushed around by one of those lows or something else, and the high's in a fairly static position, this feature can dominate the second half of the race. And in fact, that was the case a couple of Transpacs ago. It was amazing. On the 70, we basically you could time the jibes. I mean, I could set my sleep schedule based on that. and we were on when the wind's to the left, you want to be on starboard. When the wind's to the right, you want to be on port. There's also clouds and squalls, especially as you get into the trade wind zone and out of the mid latitudes into more of the trade wind zone. And there's several classes in Marine Weather University on the winds around clouds. The first component of our full length course is the advanced course and the fundamentals course. Strongly, strongly recommend. Weather Routing 101. Routing requires three things: a route, polars, and a weather file. But it's garbage in, garbage out. And any errors in any of those things will cause errors in the solution of the optimum route. That's the whole art form. There is a free course in Marine Weather University called an Introduction to Weather Routing and Grid Files. And there's also a free course called the ABCs of Expedition. Both highly recommended if you have no experience. And in it are demos so you can see how to get these optimal routes. Practice, practice, practice. Why practice? Because fluency makes you more efficient when you're sleep deprived. Fluency in all these tools gives you more time to do other stuff, like be on deck or bail the bilge. Fluency gives you more time to look at satellite images and not just weather route. It allows you time to spend time on deck sailing and communicating with the crew and understanding how the clouds wind works around cloud. Here's a downdraft cloud where it's precipitating, and some images of it's coming at us and how the wind might fan out around at the front of the cloud. It's a big bad lull on the backside of the cloud, and we go in all that in Marine Weather University. And then here's a cloud that's not raining, and so it's a sucking cloud. So it actually does backwards. There's more wind on the back upwind side of a non-precipitating cloud. Satellite can help you determine what the clouds are doing, especially at night. And now we have Starlink, we can get high resolution data. Like, look there's the islands there. Chris went through, this is from one of our courses. He went through and interpreted all the wind features around all these different cloud features here. And it takes practice and it takes understanding of the tools that are available to meteorologists. Can lay all these different filters depending on daytime or nighttime to see the clouds as clearly as possible. And this sort of becomes, the satellite data becomes the high resolution data that we don't have out in the ocean. It is more accurate than any weather model. And all the weather models will try to predict where squalls are, they almost always will be wrong, whereas your eye doesn't lie. So this is where I'm really working to try to up my game for the next Transpac race, is being fluent in satellite imagery. Thankfully, Chris and I just did, our most recent course was an advanced course on satellite and radar interpretation. Okay, so to wrap it up, the final 48 hours of navigation prep for a big offshore race. Look how tired I look there. Bottom line is you can't do everything in 48 hours. You can't get on the boat and, oh, I'm the navigator, where's the power button? There's no way. There's way more preparation than that if you want to cover all the bases. It can be a manic time on the boat with all the loading and unloading and, crew arriving and partying and all the rest of the stuff. You want to stay chill, and hopefully you've done so much preparation that you're just really putting the icing on the cake in the last 48 hours, but you're spending a lot of time either on the boat or in your hotel room or home or whatever with a high bandwidth connection doing your final sets of routing. Very important to get good rest. I've always thought the night before the race is super important to get a really good night's sleep. And in the last 48 hours, identify what Chris calls the problem of the day in the strategy. referring to Stan's first leg, the race to the synoptic breeze, from the coast to where you're out in the pure synoptic breeze, away from the shore effect. So where do you go to study and prepare? There's the link to Artie's website for marine electronics and tips on the best equipment to use for racing navigators. Nick at expeditionmarine.com, not only can you download the software, but there's tons of resources there, from charts to weather information and a lot of the other pro instructors that from time to time do really valuable webinars, like Campbell Field or Will Oxley. He's got a great book on expedition. Nick, that the resources at Expedition Marine are good. Here's some of the courses in Marine Weather U that I've referred to here. The Transpac course, preparing for the Hawaii races, really valuable one. This is if you want to get deep into the satellite and weather radar interpretation 201. There is a lower level satellite and radar interpretation course that you could take. There's an advanced course in weather models and a low level course in weather models. That would be, if you've never played with weather models before, have a look at taking one of those. Sort of a one-stop shopping are one of the two full-length courses, either the A-class fundamentals course or the 16-class advanced course. We have over 6,000 students that have come through Marine Weather University. Most just take one of the free classes, of which there are a lot, and some great ones that Chris has put together. Have you ever seen anybody do this before in their front yard? There I am testing a life jacket to make sure it stays inflated. Turns out that in that Rambler, that fast Irish Sea capsize on the Rambler, my life jacket didn't hold air. So I made a promise to myself that when I get assigned an inflatable life jacket before the start of the race, I'll blow it up and hang it up somewhere in the boat and come back 12 hours later. And if it's still full, I'll go through the cumbersome process of folding it back up, but knowing that the thing is going to blow up. Now, I obviously blow it up with air, with the mouthpiece, and I don't spend the CO2 cartridge. And with that, I will consider this to be my part of this presentation to be complete. Randy?
Peter, bravo. As always, I've listened to you many times and sailed with you and against you, and I always learn something new. So great jobbing for everybody listening out there. The resources that Peter presented tonight are just, you can't get this stuff anywhere else. So thank you again. Thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. And Nick, Artie, and Stan had some good stuff in the chat room, so thanks for doing that. And we do have Transpac Yacht Club does have a YouTube channel, so that's where all these videos end up. I put a link in the chat box for everyone. So that's all I have. Everybody have a happy Turkey Day, and we'll see y'all soon.
And that concludes the highlight reel of our 2-hour presentation on A Navigator Looks at Transpac. The entire presentation will be uploaded and available in the course curriculum of the Marine Weather University course, Preparing for Hawaii Races. Have a look at Marine Weather University. There's tons of stuff there that will help you for your racing. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.